Session coming up now, and next to me I have the wonderful James Carpenter from ISA. James, what do you do?
What do I do?
What do you do? Introduce yourself.
My daughter recently did a PowerPoint presentation for her school about what I did, and she had a PowerPoint presentation. This is what my daddy does for ISA. He makes PowerPoint presentations, talks to people and drinks coffee. And I was very upset until I realised that it was true. That is what I do.
That's where all the work is done. That's why people are out there talking about PowerPoints and drinking coffee, and they're not in here. So we need to kind of change that paradigm somehow, and you're going to change it now. You've got some fabulous speakers lined up, I see. And the first session is an immediate next step in the exploration of our moon.
Yes.
That will come on. It will come on.
Working? Yeah, great. Okay, hello. Welcome back. This is way more fun than coffee, all excellent desserts. This is even better than that chocolate one with the crumbly stuff on top. That's how good this is going to be. We're going to talk about something called the International Lunar Resources Prospecting Campaign. The idea of this is that missions around the world are happening, missions around the world are being planned. Each of those missions in isolation can do something good, but if they come together, they'll do so much more. And so we have Clive, Neal, and Antonino, Salmeri. They're going to talk a little bit about this. I'd like to introduce them. Come to the stage, please. They're going to talk to us about what the ILRPC is. It's an awful acronym that is going to have to change.
Figure out a better one.
We'll figure out a better one. Actually, I can do PowerPoint presentations, drink coffee, talk to people, and acronyms. That's the other thing that I can do. I'll give you an acronym. Yes. And then Antonio is going to talk a little bit about what an international consortium to do this would be like. So, all yours, Clive.
All right.
You can have the handheld mic.
Yeah. It's like having an exploding sun in your face up here. It's really quite impressive. But 4 p.m., day 2, Space Resources Week, and I can sense the malaise that has come out this afternoon. Walking around out there, people getting double espressos, lots of sugar, and we've got the jet-lagged people in the front row. That's impressive. I shall keep an eye on you two, that's for sure. So, I'm Clive Neal. I'm at the University of Notre Dame. I've been a lunatic for almost 4 decades now, and you'll notice the minor edit to the Esric slide because we're talking about the moon here, not Mars. And I want you to sort of have a picture. We've got all this great technology we've been talking about. I went to the legal session yesterday, and I thought my head was going to explode because geologist. And we go down there, and lawyers are talking about enabling, being enabling. And it was a very foreign concept to me and my interaction with lawyers. But this is what happens when you have one subject, space resources, that brings in all these diverse sectors with the focus. And we speak different languages. We have to understand those languages, and that's the important thing about the space sector. It's multidisciplinary. And if you have all these different disciplines, we need to be able to focus them. And that's what this ILRPC acronym that James doesn't like, the International Lunar Resource Prospecting Campaign is trying to do, because we feel it's the immediate next step for the moon. We are going to come up with an idea of why we think this should be done, and there'll be 15 at least other ideas of how to do it. I've heard some during this meeting, and that's okay. But if we have a focus to bring those ideas together, that makes it something we, as a very multidisciplinary family, if you like, can get behind. And the idea is we're pitching something that is an idea that is honed by review and critique. So I always want to go to my paraphrased quote from Kraft Ericke in his posthumous paper in 1986. And if God wanted humans to become a spacefaring species, he'd have given them a moon. Our moon becomes the focus. And there are aspirations to go to Mars. And one person in America has said the moon's a distraction. We need to go straight to Mars. Okay, send him. Daniel, don't quote me on that. But this is why we have a moon. We've got a moon to learn how to live and work productively off planet. How to live off the land, because when we go to Mars and we haven't learned how to do that, we're going to be killing people. And I don't think anybody wants that to happen. So we have a steering committee that you see up on the screen that have come together to sort of steer this. And it has been evolving quite rapidly over the last 12 months. And it is really coming together. And what we need is input. We need critique. What's going to work? What's not going to work? So one thing that I think is important is this distinction. Carlos gave a great talk about cutoff grade to determine your reserve. And we need to get this distinction out there, and we need to make sure that we mean, when we talk about resources, we don't really mean reserves. Because resources is the term that's used. We're a space resources community. Wouldn't it be great to be a space reserve community, because we have the data to actually point that out? So as of today, there are no recognized reserves at the moon. There's no economic value. We were talking about benefits earlier on today. There's no monetary financial benefit in space resources, period. There may be, but right now, there isn't any. So we need to define the benefits of why we do this, because right now, it's not money. So the reserve potential, we need to be able to get to the reserve potential, and the importance for that, we need more granular data sets. We've got a lot of great orbital data, very coarse-grained. We know that there are resources there, and what you see there are the types of data we need. Most importantly, can we actually access it? Can we actually get in there? And then when we get in there, can we actually extract what we want to? If we go into a permanently shadowed region for those resources, it's at 60 Kelvin. That's a tad chilly, and the material properties are going to be very different from what we're used to. The reason why prospecting campaigns are essential before resource extraction and utilization can occur is, if you look at the top 10 PSRs for water potential that were defined in the Brown et al. 2022 paper, it's greater than 5,900 square kilometers. It's a lot of real estate to go cover with these more granular missions. And no resource prospecting campaign has been nor is planned to be conducted on the moon, and that's a problem. So campaigns require cooperation between science, exploration, commerce, and international agencies. And that little Venn diagram there shows you that everybody wins when you do resource prospecting. The data, the majority of the data, inform multiple stakeholders and multiple communities. And it will enable science to be part of it. I don't believe science should have priority over anything else. I don't like the idea of saving sites for science on the moon, because if you say, oh, resources, you can't go in there. So, quite frankly, I don't think they'll ever be visited. They're all taxpayer-funded missions. I think the majority of those sites will just be left untouched. But if we all went together, that would be liberating. It would be able to develop partnerships between lunar science exploration and commercial stakeholders, create opportunities for international cooperation, interoperability standards, and information sharing protocols. But resource utilization is in the future, but I really think science must be involved, and we need to think about a way to enable that. Not to put science above everything else, but to enable it. Because if we can follow the construction model in Europe, construction, you're digging the foundations, you come across an archaeological site, things then stop and the science gets done. You're up on the moon and you're mining a site and something anomalous occurs that you did not expect from your prospecting data. Everything stops in that area, so the scientists embedded in the team can record the data that would never have been known if we weren't extracting that resource, even with a science mission. Science and exploration enable each other, and both will enable commerce. When we go to the moon, maybe Mars, not in my lifetime, and beyond, we should go together. Let's not start creating divisions between different stakeholders as we go through this. So this prospecting campaign has begun for polar volatiles, and the idea is to simply coordinate existing and scheduled landed and orbital missions. You can see the first paper that came out from this group in 2024. We have orbital and we have landed missions, and there are also 26 missions scheduled to go to the moon between now and the end of the decade. Some of those could be very useful. So they go, I listened to the Polish mission concept. In and of itself, it's going to bring out a great data set. Targeting some specific sites as part of something bigger will make that mission a lot more valuable. And welcome to talk to Remy. I haven't found Remy since yesterday, but I would like to talk to Remy more about that. So what we've done is to look at these smaller permanently shadowed regions at the South Pole, the ones in light blue there. They will decrease risk. They have shorter traverses. They should be more accessible. And the integrated data sets can be developed into prospectivity maps. So my penultimate slide, because I've got overtime flashing there, it's going to give me a seizure in a minute. There are other potential lunar resources, and the question was asked yesterday, what are the other lunar resources? Well, here's a list in 4 different categories with polar volatile deposits, regolith, pyroclastic deposits, and geologic structures. These are lunar resources that then can be further divided into in situ use, for export, or both. And we heard about helium-3 earlier on today. So, my final slide. The integrated data sets, actually I lied, penultimate, produced by the ILRPC could influence more than understanding of lunar resources because it can nurture international cooperation in the finding of those reserves. That can then enable international cooperation in the extraction and the use of those reserves. You can develop the information sharing protocols in the prospecting data, initiate interoperability requirements, conduct science, exploration, and commercial activities at the same time, understand the resources in order to responsibly utilize them, and inform any international regulatory framework. And Stephen Freeland saw this presentation two weeks ago. And again, I think this is an opportunity. And again, when we go to the moon, Mars, and beyond, we got to go together. And I just want to end with this slide because it shows a point in time where we started talking about the campaign becoming a consortium. And you can see the usual suspects there and a few others at a dinner at the Space Resources Roundtable. And what you should also see is the next speaker. Antonino, you know him as Antonino Salmeri. We just call him the lawyer. And I'll pass it over to you.
Thanks, Clive. All right. If we can have the slides up, I think. Waiting for that. There we go. Thank you so much, Clive. Good afternoon, all dear colleagues. It's always fun to go after Clive. I will try to complement what he already briefly explained on the campaign, and then we're going to have a panel discussion to answer questions and enlarge the perspective with other members from the ILRPC steering community. But together with my co-author, Dr. Carlos Espello, we wanted to talk to you about a consortium, an international consortium for an international lunar resource prospecting campaign. So what is this about? Next slide. No, moving. All right. So as a lawyer, I have to start with the legal framework. And this is just a reminder of what the legal framework is. It's not to go into the details. There was already a beautiful session yesterday where this was already presented and discussed. But it's important to remind ourselves that space resource activities and a lunar resource prospecting campaign are not happening in a legal vacuum. There is no Wild West. There are rules already applicable. This matrix that I developed when I was teaching here at the University of Luxembourg, it shows you the fundamental principles of the Aerospace Treaty that apply to any space activity, including space resources. And it's important to look at these principles together, right? Not in isolation, because they will need to be balanced with each other. And one of the critical difficulties of space mining, why it is so challenging also from a legal perspective, is exactly how do we achieve that balance. And let me give you one example. Under Article 1 of the Aerospace Treaty, states have the freedom to use celestial bodies. And that constitutes the actual legal basis why space mining could be permitted. However, under the same principle, under Article 1 of the Aerospace Treaty, there are conditions and limitations that must be respected. One of them says that there shall be free access to all areas of celestial bodies. Now imagine you're a miner and you want to do your mining operation, but you also have to grant free access to everyone who wants to pass by or maybe even operate in the same area. On Earth, this has never been done. When you have a mining permit, you have exclusive rights. This is not possible under the Aerospace Treaty. So we will need to find a way to balance these two principles and all the others that you see in this slide so that we can actually conduct space mining. So from that matrix, we can extract a few legal boundaries that now are widely accepted. When we started this series of conferences, and I'm pleased that I've attended all of them over the past 7 years and before when James started this in ESTEC, those are the few things that now we all agree upon. 7 years ago, this was not so commonly accepted. The first thing, as I mentioned, is that yes, we can do space resources, but they need to comply with the legal framework that we have. And this compliance cannot be assessed just on a speculative or theoretical level. Yes, you can do some research. I wrote a book about it, but it's important to do it concretely, right? On a case by case, depending on what you actually want to do and how you're going to do it. And if we look at what practice has been happening in the past 50 years, we know for a fact that yes, you can do space resource activities for scientific purposes. NASA, as well as CNSA, they've gone to the moon, they've gotten resources, they've gotten regolith, they brought it back, and they're using it for scientific purposes. No one questioned that. Nobody says this is against the Aerospace Treaty. The question is, what if we talk about the establishment of a mining plant that will have certain consequences on the lunar environment? That's what we need to understand how to do it. It's not a question if it's legal, but the legality will change depending on how we do it. And states are proposing their own interpretations. Luxembourg is one of them, and they do through national legislation or and multilateral documents. Everybody in this room knows the Artemis Accords, as well as the International Lunar Research Station. But even those multilateral discussions, they will need to be agreed at a principle level at the United Nations. And we heard Stephen yesterday talking about the draft principles that the working group on the legal aspects of space resource activities has started to consider. There is a time to do that. By 2027, the working group will finish its mandate and will need to agree on the principles. So it's a challenge, but it is one that I think we are ready to face. You know, we just came from the meetings of the legal subcommittee in Vienna. There was a very positive and constructive attitude towards the principles, also thanks to the incredible work that Stephen has done in drafting them, but also because everyone understands that we need something. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be a legal regime that we're all dreaming about, but it's going to be a starting point. And that's all we need at this stage. So this brings us to the consortium. Why are we thinking about a consortium for a campaign? To set the right precedents. At this stage, we have an opportunity the moon is a blank page, if you wish. We have an opportunity to conduct activities towards the direction that we want to set for the future. And so when we think about an international lunar resource prospecting campaign, how we manage the campaign matters. How we conduct the campaign is important. And so with the steering committee, 1 year ago, we started thinking about 3 core elements. The first one is the establishment of a consortium, an international and multi-stakeholder consortium. The second, and Clive hinted to it, it's a multi-purpose data policy, because the data that we're going to find will be useful for a number of purposes, from science to business and even for other purposes, for public discovery, for engagement and education with the general public about why the moon is important, why the universe started in the way it started. And then a set of standards. The mining industry is not the Wild West. Maybe it was 200 years ago. Today, it's a very regulated sector for a reason. It's very complicated, and it costs a lot of money. And you're not going to do it if you're not sure of what you're doing. And in space, we don't have that. That's why the LORS project, that is also driven by Carlos, is now progressing towards that end. So today, we're going to talk only about the consortium, because we don't have time, but we're happy to address all these 3 elements because they work together. They are integrated. So why a consortium? Why is it beneficial? There is, number one reason is that it will allow us to comply or increase our compliance rate with the Outer Space Treaty. As I mentioned to you before, the Outer Space Treaty promotes international cooperation in the peaceful uses of outer space. So whenever we go to the moon, if we go together, if we go internationally through a legal entity that is set up to do that, it's going to be easier, it's going to be better for us to comply. Our compliance will increase just because we're involving anybody. And this is what states are doing anyways. The Artemis program is an international program. The ILRS is an international program. If countries go together, their compliance with international space law will increase because of that. And a consortium will allow us to manage it properly. Also, from an efficiency viewpoint, if you have a legal entity that will help you gathering the data and then processing them and developing products, that will be the integrated data sets that we can talk more about later, that will facilitate engagement. It will enable confidence for investments. It will show that there is a series of professionals from a number of disciplines that are working together through a legal vehicle that ensures compliance with international law and increases the rate of what we're doing. If we integrate all data sets, if we have a centralized approach, we can go faster and we can do it better. And we can build trust. If all of us work together under a framework that is collaborative and international, it will be easier to avoid conflict and overlaps that could potentially jeopardize this activity for all of us. So how are we going to set it up? And this is an open question. Through the last year with the steering committee, we've been exploring different formats, but we're very much looking to your feedback. And because we have 3 main stakeholders, we have states, we have governments, we have science, and we have industry, then we are looking at a consortium that will mirror that structure, where science, industry, and governments can work together. And there will be different tiers of participation. You don't need to have $10 million to participate. If you have them, of course, please come to us. But you can also participate with a small mission, with a payload. And then you will get something proportionate in return, a fair contribution. This is all about proportionality at the end of the day. Because this is a legal entity, there will be an agreement between the founding partners, and that agreement will have a simple governance structure that any legal entity has. There is a board of directors, there is a management committee, and there is an assembly of members. A management committee is key because if we want this effort to succeed, we need dedicated professionals, right? We cannot just do this in our free time. We can promote the effort, but if we want it to succeed, we need people dedicated to it because it's difficult and it requires time and expertise. And as I mentioned, the consortium will be open to the participation of any actor. Then the next question is, how do we fund it? And it's a big question, of course. If we look at the terrestrial mining industry, prospecting and exploration activities are mostly financed through public-private partnerships. But geological survey entities and companies, they work together to create the prospectivity maps that then enable other types of companies to come and do the actual mining site. So we will look at a similar structure because we're not here to reinvent the wheel, and because, as we heard this morning, and I very much like that talk, if we want space mining to succeed, we need to learn from terrestrial mining. Learn from the good things and also avoiding to repeat the same mistakes. Then, of course, there is also the opportunity to get private investments and generate revenues. Once we have data sets that have been integrated, they could constitute a product that could be sold to members that don't want to engage with the consortium, but maybe are interested in what we're doing. And again, we're looking to your feedback. Depending on what will be the initial activities of the consortium, of the campaign, we will design a governance and funding structure that is needed to achieve those objectives. So we're not trying to build a super entity here. We're trying to give a legal vehicle to something that we believe it's useful. And so in terms of next steps, with the steering committee, we are working to design phase 1 of the campaign. There will be a workshop on Thursday here in Luxembourg, and then will be another one at Space Resources Roundtable just in a few weeks. And then, depending on the progress of these discussions, we may all meet together again in Australia, in Sydney, for the 71st ISC to unveil the first phase of the ISC. And I think that could be an exciting time to be alive and in the space resources sector. And with that, I will conclude and give it back to you, James. Thank you very much.